Hi everyone, it's Jessica. Thanks for joining me today. It is the second Friday of the month, which means that I am doing a hop here on YouTube with a couple of friends. We're all going to work on the same sketch here that is from PageMaps. I pulled it off of the Scrapbooking and Cards Today magazine website, and we are all going to create from that same layout and the same theme, which this month is outdoors. So I pulled these photos of a bike ride in a park from a couple of years ago, and I was really drawn to that really bright yellow green that is in my photos. I think it's going to work well perfectly with these papers that I have from my March Hip Kit Club subscription. And then the color of my daughter's shirt matches this here. This is some of the cardstock that I got with my kit and goes also with that one pattern paper. So those are the papers I'm going to use. And you can see my scribbles over on my sticky note there because, of course, there aren't any dimensions for cutting the paper on that page map pattern. So I was trying to figure out what would be the best dimensions to do. And then also one of the papers, I want to use both sides of it. So I was trying to make sure that that was actually going to work and I wasn't going to cut it in a way that I wouldn't be able to do that. So for this one here, I'm just going to start by making a 3.5 inch cut, and then I'll end up cutting this 12-inch piece in half. So those two will be 6 by 3.5. I figured I could kind of cheat a little there. You'll see when I start to put it together that it didn't really need to be a full 12-inch piece for that particular paper. Then I'm going to make a couple of other cuts, just again, kind of based on my best guess. This here is going to go on both sides of the layout. So I did a 10.5 inch square by, or I'm sorry, not a square, 10.5 inch by 10 inch square. And so that'll kind of go here and leave just a little bit of a wider margin over on the right and the left-hand side. So this one here is an 8.5 inch square on that blue pattern paper. And then I just kind of layered up some of the photos the way that it showed in the sketch. So I've got these two that are 4 by 6, and I'm going to end up matting those later, but I think that'll work out really well. The journaling goes over here to the right-hand side. And then this is the back side of that bright yellow green paper. It's got a really pretty floral on it. And so I just cut a 1.5 inch strip there. And I'll end up trimming that down just a little bit later and also cutting a dovetail into it. So that'll go down here just to kind of give a resting place for those pictures. Now, I don't know what I did, but I somehow got a bunch of, I don't know if it's like ink or what, on my paper trimmer, and a bunch of my papers had smudges and marks on it that I just could not get out. So you'll see me grabbing my rub and remove eraser quite a few times when I start pulling these out and noticing things. There's another one there. I don't know if when I went to cut some of my photos down, if like the ink on them was still too wet and left a residue on my paper trimmer, but it was driving me nuts. So I've gone ahead and inked all of the edges of my papers with some coordinating ink colors. And here's where you can see I didn't really need a full 12-inch piece for that yellow-green paper because I'm going to cover it with a little bit of cardstock in the center here. Now, I do kind of deviate from the pattern just a little bit because it showed 2 3x4 photos here in this place and then also a smaller size photo in the center. But I went with a 3x4 and a 4x6, and I'm going to include a flip flap so that I have room to hide just a couple more tiny photos on the bottom. So I'll end up with 7 pictures total on this double page layout. Now, like I said, I am going to mat these photos over here. I had that blue-green cardstock over on the right-hand side of the page, and I didn't really have much of it over here on the left page. So I thought that this would kind of make these photos pop just a little bit and then also bring that same colored cardstock over to the left-hand side. So just burnish that down with my little rag here. I don't like to touch my photos if I can help it. I try to avoid the fingerprints, but I want to make sure that they're stuck down really well. And then I will layer those like this. And then I still, like I said, need to figure out that journaling over to the side. So I did put another little bit of that cardstock there just because in the sketch it looks like it comes over to the left-hand page, but most of it's going to end up getting hidden. Now, the really cool thing on that sketch is that journaling piece had some fun little half circle notches at the top and the bottom. So what I did is I just took my little scrap piece of white paper here. I don't even know how big it is. It was just a strip that I had in my scrap bin. And I'm just figuring out where the halfway point is. That way when I go to create that notch, I can make sure that I center it up on the paper and get it in the same spot for both the top and the bottom. And then as I was thinking about that, making sure that the top and the bottom both looked the same, I thought, I better mark where I want the very top of that little notch to go, so that way I cut it the same for both sides. So I'm just going to kind of use those pencil marks on there and line them up with my punch and then punch out this little notch. I think that's such a fun little detail that I probably wouldn't have thought to include on my own if I hadn't seen it on the sketch. So that's one of the things I really like about that. Now, when I put that down, I was like, oh my gosh, this just blends in. Like, you cannot see it at all. I tried a couple of different things with that little journaling piece to make it stand out. You can't really tell it in the video, but I have inked the edges that really didn't do much of anything. So I thought, maybe I'll take like a sponge and get some of that yellow-green kind of color down on it before I stamp my journaling lines. That looked terrible. And so then I'm like, I'll just flip it over and use the other side, but what am I going to do? So this is where I decided to do a little bit of ink blending and just still keep it mostly white, but add just a touch of color to it. I'm going to use a really old ink pad that I think the color of it matches well with the cardstock that I have. This is an old color called Juniper from Close to My Heart. And then I've grabbed a blending brush and my little all-purpose mat here, and I'm just going to blend on some color all the way around the perimeter of this journaling piece. And I leave the center of it pretty white, but there's just that nice wash of color all the way around. And you'll see once I go ahead and put this back down onto that page, it definitely does the trick of making it stand out, because before it was just lost in all of that whiteness. And it just really needed something to make it pop. So there, I've stamped some journaling lines on it. That is so much better. And so now I'm ready to turn my attention to the title and the embellishments. And honestly, I really struggled with that on this particular layout. I'm going to go ahead and put this down, and I don't want to put my photos down just yet, because when I went back and looked at that sketch, I could see that one of the things they did for their embellishments was to put some splatters down. So I'm going to use my Dina Wakley gloss spray in the gold color, and I'm going to splatter those around the page. So once those were dry, or while they were drying, I created a few stamped pieces here from some stamps in my stash. I went through and did a couple of different bicycle options that I could find, plus I had made a few trees there from a different stamp set. And this is my first time kind of putting them down on the layout and seeing what's going to work. And I could tell right away that the bikes were really not going to cut it. You don't see really any bikes in the picture, but we are on a bike ride. And so that was kind of the whole point of the photos. We were just in a park that's near our house, and there's a river there. And so we were with some cousins and just kind of like biking around. And then every time we would like stop at a cute little spot, and get out and take a bunch of pictures. So I'm like, well, I really need to get some bikes on this layout. But both of the ones that I had stamped out, and one's a little bit bigger than the other, they just really, I don't know, I wasn't loving them. So you'll see me a couple times as I'm embellishing this layout, try to work some bikes into it, but spoiler alert, there end up being none, which it feels a little silly considering that's the whole point of the pictures. But I do really like these trees that I had created. And then when I was stamping them out, I stamped out that tinier little, I thought it was a smaller tree top that you could layer over the, like the trunk there. But then I realized as I was gluing them together that that's not what it was. And I think it was meant to be a bush. So I'll try to work those in later too. When I was pulling out my stamps that had bikes, this one stamp here also had a bunch of title options on it, and that one said Everyday Adventure. I thought maybe it would work, but then I didn't really like that either. So I'm still kind of thinking about what the title could be. So again, I'm pretty happy with the trees, and I'm just kind of setting those around until I get the title figured out. I did use a couple of different die cut sets, some alphabets there to cut out the phrase, "This was a really good day." And I was inspired to do that by one of the stamp sets that had the bikes on it. There was something that said, "Have a wheelie good day," or something like that was the sentiment for the stamp set. And so that's what gave me the idea for the title. But I did cut them out of white. And again, as I started putting things down, I'm like, oh my gosh, the white is just not standing out. This is not going to work. I also realized that I left out one A, so I had to go back and die cut another A in my smaller size letters. And then I didn't want to go cut a bunch of things out of colored cardstock just because I wasn't sure what color to use, and I didn't want to waste any cardstock. So I thought, you know what, these are in white. I can go back and do a little bit more ink blending. And if I don't like it, whatever, it's just white cardstock. I can toss it or cut it again, you know. So I grabbed that same juniper colored ink pad, and I think that is going to work. Although when I did my test one here on the letter W, I did get it a little dark in a couple of spots. So you'll see as I move forward, I just try to be very light-handed with it. And probably I should have cut myself another W and ink blended it again, but it's fine. I actually really like on the title how on different parts of the letters, some have a lighter wash of color, some of them have a little bit more color in different places. And so it just kind of adds a really fun, whimsical look to the title. So I'll go ahead and kind of put this all out and make sure that that color is going to work. And I think that it is. And now also that I am positive what the title is going to be, I can also go ahead and glue down those trees. So on the trees, over on the left-hand page, I had two trees at the bottom of my photo, and the one tree was higher than the other tree. So when I go to put the two trees at the top of this right-hand page, I just alternate which one is on top because I didn't want them to look too matchy-matchy. So I just kind of switched, you know, the which one was higher than the other one. But I'm going to have just a single tree down here at the bottom by Really Good Day. And then I'll put the other two up at the top on top of that floral banner. Yeah, like that. So this one is going to be higher because on the other page, it went in the opposite direction. Okay, so I still had a whole stack of stamps with anything to do with bikes or bike riding out. And I'm like, I have got to get something with bikes on this page. Like, it's just trees and that's it. Like, there's nothing else on here to really go along with the photos. And this was an old stamp of the month from close to my heart. I don't normally cut my stamps. I know that you can and put them back together and they stamp just fine, but I still always get a little nervous about that. But this one had just been a little stamp of the month. And so I went ahead and cut off the sentiment that said enjoy the ride. And I cut it separate from the little bicycle. So that way I could just stamp without masking up at the top of my journaling piece here. So I'm going to have enjoy the ride in some brown ink. And so that kind of goes along with the bike theme, but still no pictures of bikes just yet. I am going to stamp a few and you're going to see how it just really does not turn out. It never fails. Does anybody else do this? That I get to towards the end of a layout. Here you can see I'm crossing my fingers like, please work. And it does. It stamps okay. I just don't love the look of it. But I'll get towards the end of a layout and then I start stamping on my page. And every single time I do, I'm like, oh, I hate that. That's like not really what I wanted it to be. And I really regret it. It never fails, and yet I do it every single time, and then I got to figure out something different to cover it up. So since I had stamped directly on my layout, I'm like, oh, look, I've got those little bushes that I thought were treetops. Maybe I can cover up the bikes with the bushes. And so that's what I'm going to end up doing, although it really didn't work for putting one up there next to the word this. That would have been really random. And so what I'm going to do is cut a little bit of cardstock from my kit that matches that same yellow-green color. And I'm going to make a couple of banner flags that I can just kind of layer and tuck underneath there. and cover up that one bicycle at the top. And then since I put it here on this on this right page, I'm going to do that over on the right-hand page as well. So just a couple of little random banners there, trying to fix my mistake. I mean, I think the bikes were fine. It's not what I wanted it to be. So there end up being none other than enjoy the ride and wheelie. Those are the only references to the bikes. But I think when my kids look at their scrapbooks, they'll still know. There will be the journaling. Hopefully they'll remember they are wearing bike helmets. But yeah, that's going to be it. So I did stick those 2 photos underneath that flip flap. So like I said, I have a total of 7 pictures on this double page layout. I don't know what it is about double pages that always give me a run for my money. I have a hard time embellishing them or knowing what to do with them. I feel so much more creative when I do single pages, but sometimes there are just too many pictures to put them all on a single page. So I hope you guys have enjoyed watching. And like I said, my friends are all creating with that same outdoor theme and the same double page layout. So I'm kind of curious to see if anyone else made it, as it was as a double page, or did they do one side or the other side and make a single page? It's going to be really fun to see. So make sure that you check the description box down below, and there will be a link to a playlist where you can watch everyone else's videos. All right, guys, happy crafting. I'll see you next time. Bye.